across the UK.
This is BBC 5 Live.
5 Live Daily with Adrian Chiles.
Coming up to 22:11 this miserably wet Monday morning in August. Sickness benefits are the next part of the welfare system to be overhauled by the look of it. The Work and Pension Secretary Ian Duncan-Smith is making a speech this morning in which we're told he'll describe the system as being in, quote, dire need of reform. We want to hear from you if you have experience of this. Perhaps you claim employment support allowance or work with claimants in another way. Perhaps you work at a job centre or you would agree to speak to us. Does the system work? Where does it work? Where does it not work? 0500 909 693, text 85058, or get us at BBC5 Live on Twitter. We can speak to an independent expert on benefits, Gary Vaux. Is that Vaux? Is that how I say it, Gary?
It's close enough, Adrian.
It's close enough. All right, I'll settle for that. So it's actually so difficult to get your head round what's what in the welfare system. It's all so complicated. Can you explain exactly which bit of it we're talking about here, or Ian Duncan-Smith will be talking about here?
Right, we're talking about employment support allowance, which is a benefit for people who are unfit for work. It used to be invalidity benefit, it was incapacity benefit, but since 2008 it's been known as ESA, Employment and Support Allowance. So it's a benefit for people who are not fit for work. They've got an approval from their GP initially, and then they've gone through what's known as a work capability assessment, provided by an independent company who give results to the DWP, who make the decision as to whether you're fit for work or not.
So there is a process by which you are declared unfit for any kind of work at all, and and I say that advisedly because that's what Ian Duncan-Smith seems to be driving at.
Well, they will sometimes. I mean, there's been quite a lot of controversy about the work capability assessment. The company that provided it, a French company called Atos, have actually lost the contract, and a different contractor now are doing it. So the accuracy of those assessments, but they do sometimes have suggested that people who are well should qualify, but more often I think they've seen people who are ill have been told, well, actually, we think you are fit for some kind of work. So it's not that when they're doing the assessment, they do consider, whether you're fit for any kind of work. And sometimes they'll say, well, yes, you might have been a road digger, but now you're fit to do checkout duties.
Okay, so in that case, I'm slightly confused, because what Ian Duncan-Smith seems to be driving at is that he says at the moment the system is binary, in so much as it says, right, you are declared unfit for work, so either completely unfit for work or absolutely fit for work, and there's no grey area in between, i.e. fit for some work. Now, you're saying the current system doesn't allow for that, but you're saying it kind of does allow for that a bit.
I think it does, and in addition, if you do qualify for ESA, then they put you into one of two groups. They put you into the support group, which is basically people who are probably not going to work again, and they are the sort of the long-term, very seriously ill, or they put you into what's known as the work-related activity group, where they expect you to undertake work-related activity and will actually sanction you if you don't. So there is a sort of, you're still sick, you're unfit for work, but you are expected to undertake this work-related activity. So, and in addition, you can also do part-time work and stay on ESA. You can do what's called permitted work for up to 16 hours a week and earn up to a certain amount. So from the outside, yes, it does sometimes look a very sort of clear-cut one side of the line or the other issue, but in practice, it does cope with some of the issues that seems to be being raised today.
So, in which case, I'm unclear about what he is trying to what he is trying to change. As much as you can figure out by what's been said so far, I know we don't know exactly what he's going to say, Gary. But what does it look like he's going to change, as far as you can see? Well,
it was announced in the budget by the Chancellor that what they were planning to do was effectively remove the work-related activity group. So either when assessed, you would either go into the support group, in which case, they're going to leave you alone, effectively, and you get the equivalent of job seekers plus about 35 quid a week, or they would put you effectively onto job seekers, so that that middle group of work-related activity would disappear. the logic then is that if you're on job seekers allowance, they will make allowances in the job centre for what kind of work they will expect you to do. And that's the theory, at least, whether that works in practice. But that's what we think is going to be announced, that it's the ending of this work-related activity group that will be announced today.
Okay. Just stay with us, and I'm sure I'm going to come back to you, Gary.
Okay.
Politically, what's going on here then? Our correspondent Susan Hume joins us. I think I remember reading that the Chancellor was, quote-unquote, squeamish about doing much about sickness and disability benefit.
Yes, because it's a bit of a political stick of dynamite, isn't it? Seeming to attack people who are sick and ill. I mean, I note your conversation about what's changing, and I think we are in the world of politics, and it's all about the message. What Ian Duncan-Smith is very keen to do is send out a message about work. It's his version of the glass half full, glass half empty thing. He wants to look at what people can do and not what they can't. I think what he's looking for is a whole sort of philosophical shift in the way that this works.
Okay, but that's sort of rhetoric, and I understand the glass half empty.
Politicians.
But I wonder how that. But how does that, looking at what somebody can do rather than what they can't do? How does that crystallise into policy? Are we going to get any clarity on that?
I don't think we are today. I think this today is about the message, about him emphasising time and again that it's got to be a move towards work. He doesn't talk in any of this about costs and money, but the fact of the matter is that they've done very well in getting people off job seekers allowance. They've cut that by about half. They've not done so well in getting people off sickness benefits. And I think this will be part of a push and perhaps softening us up for changes in the future, but we don't know what those are today. Softening us up for more of a move towards getting people into work, even if they can not do a full job but can do a bit of one. It's a whole philosophy that Ian Duncan-Smith has been pushing really for years and years, because he believes very deeply that work is actually therapeutic. He thinks that being off work with a physical sickness, for example, actually causes mental illness. And that's why he, as well as a sort of policy, and there is the financial aspect of it, I think he's a true believer that this is what is good for people and makes them richer and happier.
Okay, thanks for that, Susan. Tom Pollard is the policy manager at the mental health charity Mind. Now, your take on this would be what, Tom?
Well, I mean, Mind wants to see many more people with mental health problems supported into work, and we know that most people with mental health problems do want to work. But our concern is that the government has consistently failed to recognise why it is that the system is failing. And again, some of the messages coming out today seem to focus on the idea that what needs to happen is to put kind of more requirements on people, more expectations on people. But what we've seen with the current system is that the support that's offered to people once they're on a benefit, like employment support allowance, isn't at all tailored to the needs of people with mental health problems. And actually, the kind of pressure people are put under the threat of losing their benefits if they fail to undertake certain activities. From what we've heard from people we represent, it's making people feel very anxious and stressed. It's making people more ill in many instances, and making it harder for them to return to work. So while we support the idea that this benefit and the whole system needs a fundamental overhaul, our concern is that the government is yet again not going to listen to the actual reasons people are struggling.
But in principle, would you accept the point, which I think he's sort of driving at, that very few people should actually be ruled as being totally unfit for any kind of work? That there might be people with mental health issues who could do some kind of work, and, I mean, who's to say whether it's for their mental benefit? I mean, he's not a psychiatrist, for heaven's sake, but if that's what he believes, is that what he believes? But do you think some people with mental health issues could and should be working?
Well, a huge number of people with mental health problems do work, and there is good evidence that the right work with the right support is good for your mental health. Our concern is that what they're going to drive at again here is not to provide the kind of support people need, which is about really understanding their mental health, the barriers they face. And actually, a lot of the issue here is about people not getting the support they need in the workplace, and employers not being open to supporting people with mental health problems. And we think what may happen again is putting pressure on people to move into work rather than providing a kind of supportive and understanding system. It will again be focused on sanctions and the threat of people losing their benefits if they won't engage in activity. And we know that won't help people.
2 million people receive ESA, and you have just said that the whole system needs reforming. How would you reform it then?
Sorry, I've just lost you there.
So 2 million people receive ESA.
Yeah.
It's an awful lot of people. £100 a week, that figure's trebled in 4 years. You just said the system needs reforming. How should it be reformed in your view?
Well, we know that there are lots of local providers out there who are doing a really good job of supporting people with mental health problems into work. And the way they do that is by employing people who understand mental health. They work with people on a voluntary basis rather than pressuring them into taking activities on. And they really look at what are the barriers this person's facing and what's that person's aspirations rather than pushing them to any job as soon as possible. They work with that person to understand what it is that person wants to do. And so we want to see a system that's really understanding and supportive. But time and time again, the changes that have occurred under this government, the previous government, the government before that, have always focused on the idea that we need to kind of mandate people to do things. And actually what we need now is for the government to really listen to people with mental health problems and why it is they're struggling.
So somebody called Jacqueline on Twitter has been in touch, saying they suffer from chronic anxiety and depression. So I claim ESA and I'm terrified of what will happen next. I suppose that's the point. Much as it sends a political message that we're being tough on this and we're getting people back into work because that's what's good for them. The message it will send out to somebody who is on ESA and has mental health issues, it will just terrify them. So where should they go? Where should they seek advice and reassurance?
Well, if anyone's concerned about the situation with their benefits, we'd always advise them to get in touch with Assistance Advice or maybe the local mine if they provide benefits advice. People do need support, and actually that support is increasingly hard to find. But you're right, people hear these messages and it's designed to kind of show the country as a whole that the government's intended to be tough on benefits. But for people who are actually supported by those benefits, it's really, really scary. And it means people actually are even more wary about engaging with the support. And what we need now is, a real effort to re-engage with people and work with them on a voluntary basis rather than insisting on using the threat of sanctions as a tool to try and engage people, because it just doesn't work.
Okay. Thanks for that. Susan, I suppose there could be something else politically going on here. When Labour got itself in trouble, tied itself in knots, had an argument with itself over benefit cuts, when the party split on the vote a couple of weeks ago, is this the Tories trying to take advantage of that and give them another excuse to have an argument with themselves?
Yes, and indeed, of course, it was a Labour government who'd brought in the ESA in the first place, but it didn't end up in the reductions that had been expected. And Ian Duncan Smith, I think, will be keen to show, as we were saying just then, to the country as a whole that they're being firm with the welfare bill, but there is always the added advantage for him that he can tweak Labour's tail once he gets back into the Commons chamber, where he is, of all the politicians in there, he does like to have a go at the opposition.
Okay, Susan, thanks very much for that. Gary, you're still there as an independent expert. I'm taking it you come at this with no political bias, which of course is impossible, but you're playing God on this one. If there's one thing you could change that strikes you as ludicrous as a, quote, independent expert on this, what would it be?
I would look at the work capability assessment that is done. I would make sure it's done by people with a knowledge of mental health. Quite often it's not. I would make sure that there was a supply of jobs in the community for people to move into, which I think, we can talk about moving people into work. Well, there has to be jobs there. And I think we need to look at people's expectations. What are their aspirations? And for many people who are on ESA, they do wish to work. And I think what we have to do is move to a system which does make that easier. The government's introduction of universal credit in a few years' time, and ironically, they've said that ESA claimants will be the last to transfer onto universal credit. Maybe they should be the first, because universal credit does open up the possibility of part-time, or better possibilities of part-time work. But my first thing would be to reform the work capability assessment itself, so that we get a proper assessment of what people are or are not capable of.
Okay, thanks for that. Gary Vaux, independent expert on benefits. Shares are down in London. 5 Live Money's Rob Young joined us. By how much, Rob?
Well, the FTSE 100